Thanks for joining us. I am Molly Cash. I am the COO of the ISA. We're really thrilled to be here tonight with Women in Film. We have done events with them in the past and they have always been wonderful. So thank you, Ebony. Thank you, Women in Film. We love you dearly. And thanks everybody for coming to join us tonight for this event. I'm going to give just a few notes about what the ISA is, since we do have people from Women in Film who might not be as familiar with us, and maybe some of you are new to the ISA. So it's really our mission to help screenwriters, to inspire them, educate them, encourage them on their journey to help you push forward in your career. And we are, first and foremost, an online hub for you to create a profile, a free profile, where you can post your screenplays, your awards, your wins, your successes, your posters, your pitches, a whole bunch of stuff. And it acts as an online calling card for you, so that you can send out a link to people that you know that you want to showcase your work, and people on our site, producers, managers, agents, they are all looking for content as well, and they will see you. So it's a really great way to showcase your work and yourself. In addition to that, we have a multitude of resources on the site, such as podcasts, articles, videos. This event and all of our previous events that we've done this year online are on our pro tips page, so you can watch them at your leisure. There's a ton of content there. And then we have resources that we vet personally to make sure that they are valuable and worthwhile for you, so you know that you can trust these resources on our site. And that includes contests, consultants, classes, events like this one. There's just an immense amount of resources and opportunity on the site. So I encourage you all to take a look. It's networkisa.org. You can also find us on socials at Network ISA. And I'm going to turn over to Ebony to talk a little bit about Women in Film.
I am so excited to be here. If you are a member of Women in Film and you have been to any Women in Film events over the past year virtually, you have seen my face a lot. But if you have not been to one, or if you are an ISA member, I'm so excited to have you here for this pitching event. Women in Film is an organization that is devoted to advancing equity in the screen industries, specifically along gender lines, but we know that we need to take a holistic approach there. And so we take a very intersectional approach to our work and to our mission. We have a whole suite of opportunities and resources available for Women in Film members, including career development programs for writers, such as our feature residency lab, our episodic labs. We have cohorts available for you to network and be in community with people according to craft and industry. But we also host a multitude of cultural and thought leadership discussions throughout the year. As the manager of public programs, I am charged with overseeing that programming, and I hope that I will see some of you at these Women in Film events as we continue to be virtual. So it will be on Zoom, but as I say to everyone, I love Zoom. I love being on these things. So please, if you come to an event, you want to learn more about Women in Film, so many of our events are open not just to Women in Film members, but also to the general public, because we recognize how important it is to be doing outreach and to be expanding our pipeline. Just hit me up, email me. I'll make sure to drop my email address in the chat. Would love to connect with you, have some virtual coffee. I do want to make a quick announcement. I don't want to take too much time, but we do have a couple of things that I want to make note of. One of the things that I'm really proud of that Women in Film has done is recognize the tremendous pressure that we are all under during this pandemic and while we're under quarantine. So we have started a coping in quarantine emotional support space. It will be led by licensed counselors. It's going to be an 8-week virtual support space. I would be happy to talk to you about it. We'd be happy to connect you with the folks who are putting that on, but we really want to make sure that the community is aware of this resource, because we know how hard so many of us are struggling right now. And then I also just want to do a quick shout out to a filmmaker discussion we will be having with the director, producer, and writer of The Never List, a new film coming out with Vival Stewart. This is a particularly notable film because the production company, the Neverless Productions, is one which has gotten the Reframe stamp. Reframe is an initiative that we do in partnership with Sundance, and it's about noting productions that maintain racial and gender balance. And so we were just delighted to be able to feature a production like this that has an overwhelmingly female POC and LGBT crew working behind the scenes. So would love to have people come. That's next Thursday. You can go to wif.org to learn more about that.
My name is Felicity Wren. I'm the VP of Development for the International Screenwriters Association. Yes, I am from London originally. That is a strange accent you can hear, but I love storytelling. I love storytellers. The ISA is a massive fan of screenwriters because I do believe that story can change the world. And we need to change the world sometimes. So we're very excited to be doing this pitching event today. We're really pleased to be presenting pitches too, from writers from the ISA development slate, which is a carefully curated group of writers, 164 of them that we have on our on the ISA site. You can have a look at them, have a route around. You can click to the site and see them. And then we're also getting pictures from the Women in Film members, and we're very excited to hear those too. The things we look for in the development slate writers is a clear point of view and an original voice. And when you're pitching, you want both of those things to shine through. We have all now discovered that pitching is an essential part of the business, same as creating pitch decks, being good in the room, everything now, you know, you have to keep growing. So just take all the practice you can get for pitches and do not be intimidated. A good rule to remember is that anyone you are pitching to wants you to be brilliant. They want your idea to be perfect for them, and they want you to be a massive success and them to be a massive success and make loads of money and cement both your careers. It's not a test. It should be a fun explanation of the crazy thoughts that are in your mind, and then delivered in a way that's engaging and thoughtful and honest. Be you. You're the best person to tell your story.
I'm Shayna Weber. I am the Senior Manager of Production and Events for ISA, and I'm also a new Women in Film member. So I'm very excited about how easy that process was. Thank you, Ebony, for just telling me to go on the website and look at it, and it's so easy now. So yay. Okay, so here's how tonight's gonna work. We are gonna do about a 40-minute chat with our special guests here, who I will go into introducing in a second. And then we're gonna hear the pitches, and then we're gonna go, we're gonna answer a few questions. If someone has some in the chat, at that point I'll ask, and then we're gonna go into some breakout rooms. And if you're brave enough to maybe pitch your own project or, you know, talk through some ideas and all of that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our lovely panel, our panelists today. First up, we have Nicole Tosu, who is EVP of TV at Project X Entertainment. We have Quinn Curry, who's a creative producer, and we have Dan Seco, who is a literary manager. I would like to go around to each of you first and just have you sort of introduce yourself and tell us what you do. And also at the end of that, what lights you up? Like, what about this industry do you love the most? What's the thing that like drives you? Let's go with Nicole first.
Thanks, Shayna, for that introduction. But yes, my name is Nicole Tosu. I'm the head of television at Project X Entertainment. It's a fairly new production company, but the principals are fairly well known. Jamie Vanderbilt, William Sherrick, and Paul Neinstein are my three amigos, I like to call them, that I work for and work with. Jamie is a screenwriter who's written Zodiac, produced Murder Mystery, Ready or Not, and the upcoming Scream movie, just to name a few. And I joined Project X last year, mere weeks before the first lockdown, I guess, the big lockdown. And this last year, I think we, like everyone else, doubled down on development. And our mandate is very simple. We want to make smart things commercial and commercial things smart. And that frees us up to play around in different buckets. So on our slate, we have action, we have thrillers, we have comedy, we have animation, we have unscripted. We do it all. For me, especially, to take a step further beyond the mandate that we have, I really love characters I haven't seen, or worlds I haven't seen. But if it's something we've seen before, characters or worlds, I really especially love it when people are able to subvert it and find a new way in.
Hi everyone, Quinn Curry. I am a producer, independent producer at a company called Made with Love Media, where I produce alongside a producer named Stephen Love. He likes to go by Stephen Dr. Love. I should probably put that in there. Currently we are in production on a feature film that we have with Macro and Netflix. It's called They Clone Tyrone, and it is Joel Taylor's first feature film, and he is an amazing writer. So we're excited about that project. We bounce in all spaces similar to Nicole's company. We do TV, we are in animation. We don't consider ourselves to be genre specific. So we are pretty, I know that term gets thrown around a lot, genre agnostic, but I think more and more it has to be true, especially if you are a smaller production company like we are. We are busy 3-person team who really comes at stories, and our mandate is, I guess you could call it sugared with the medicine is what we like to call it. So every story we tell has to have a nugget of a piece of learning for our society and culture that we need to walk away with, but heavily draped in entertainment and story and character, so that you're not feeling like you're getting preached to, obviously. But that is kind of the direction we are going in. And as far as me, what interests me, what stories interest me, I love stories that are told with high levels of empathy. So I will digest any amount of content as long as I feel like the person who created it had true nurturing hands with it. And that's really important to me. So yeah, I'm happy to meet everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Seco. I'm a literary manager at Empirical Evidence. We represent writers and directors for film and TV. Beyond that scope, we also represent playwrights, short story writers, novelists, podcast creators. We don't really produce in like a traditional sense, but I think if we can add value to some of our clients' projects, we'll play a hand in that, but it's not necessarily our priority. In terms of what drives me or excites me, or I think we're kind of shifting the question around. It's a couple of things. I love seeing like writers go from struggling, trying to make it to that first big sale, and just seeing that like, wow, like that's life-changing. Like, we're not doctors here. We're not like saving the world, but it really can put someone's trajectory in a totally different direction. I think that's exciting. I also strive to work on projects that really bring joy to people's lives. If it's a comedy, I want people to be laughing. If it's something that's sad, I want people to be crying. And I think that's the best compliment a project can kind of receive, is that it's doing what it's set out to do. I want to feel something, regardless of what genre that might be.
Let's talk about pitching. For all of you, what makes a good pitch? And for the sake of this, let's talk about short form pitches in this regard, 2 minutes or so. For you guys, what makes a good pitch? Is it content, voice, energy? What is it? Quinn, let's start with you.
I think it's a little bit of everything, especially if you're talking about short form. I think you have to come in the room immediately with confidence, room or Zoom, with a level of energy and confidence that is immediately engaging. Obviously, speaking clearly and knowing your project from front to back. If I'm going to ask you a question once you're completed, I want you to be able to answer it in a very nuanced way, so that you're also answering the multiple other questions that I might have or someone else in the room might have. Yeah.
Okay. Dan.
I don't want anything to get in the way of getting a sense of what the pitch is going for. So be it nerves or lack of energy or all the other factors that can kind of diminish what's actually trying to be said. And so if you're able to like overcome those variables and give the clear, clean, simple, to the point pitch, and I can actually visualize what you're trying to say, be it a show or a film, I think then you've done your job. So I think, like someone alluded to at the beginning of this program, we want you to succeed. We want you to have something that's great. And I think just overcoming all the other factors so that you can just get to the point and give us a sense of what it is, like that's what I'm hoping for.
Okay, Nicole?
For me, what I really look for is getting a sense of why you are the best person to tell the story. I always love when people open pitches with a personal story of theirs so they can connect to the project. Because I think that, with good training, everyone can pitch a story, but not everyone can be the right person to tell that story. So that's what I look for, especially.
Okay. And I'm going to stick with you, Nicole, for this next question. For you guys specifically, when you hear a pitch, what do you need to take away from that pitch? What's the one thing that you need to walk away with or hold on to from that?
It's expanding on what I just mentioned earlier. It's the pitches that I remember, for one, are always, wow, that person has a real personal, tie to that story. But I love it when I think that writers sometimes focus too much on plot of the story, and not focus enough on characters. And I think that you don't want the story to motivate the character. It's the other way around. And I think really drilling down on characters for me, like I probably won't remember points in the story. Like, you can pitch a pilot and the season and whatever, I don't care. But if you pitch me a character that I haven't seen or heard of, seen before, or it's a different kind of character, I really respond to that. 9 times out of 10, I'll remember a pitch and I'll just remember the feeling of the character the person pitched to me in the room or in the Zoom.
Great, that's a good answer. Quinn, do you want to go next?
Yeah, not to keep piggybacking off you, Nicole, but I think that's honestly the case. That I want to know your characters, and I want to know that you understand your characters, where they are psychologically in the world, and how they would move not only within your story, but if they were actually tangible people, like what would be the decisions that they would be making. And I think I think that is, for me, the standout point.
Okay. Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think the character point is super strong, like especially for TV, right? Like, if we're talking about a protagonist, how do they grow over the course of several seasons, or how do they devolve? I think it's sometimes difficult to introduce something so new that it's just about the concept. It's like, okay, cool, the concept may hook my attention, but I think the really great sense of the character is what gives a pitch staying power, something that lingers after it's finished, and you really think about it, like, oh wow, that is something that could sustain itself over multiple seasons and really be something that attracts a viable audience.
Great, let's stay on that subject. You just mentioned specifically in a TV pitch. So what's the difference fundamentally, or a little nugget of pitching between, pitching a feature or pitching a TV series? Are there fundamental differences, or are they the same, or what do you need to look out for? Dan, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, I mean, for me, when I speak about pitching, a lot of it is preparing my clients to go out and pitch, right? Like, people pitch stuff to me through different, events and things like that, and I get to know people that way, and that's great. But I think a lot of my day-to-day is clients go out and they'll pitch a series, and I think it's about finding the right balance. It's not focusing on one aspect of the show in too big of a way. Like, you could linger on the setting, or linger on like some plot device that like may or may not be it, but it's like, how can you find the right balance where you're talking about every aspect of the show so that it doesn't feel like just like a story. It feels like something that is building off of what's already been done within the genre. And I think that's a really important point. It's not about like, oh, well, this succeeded, so it's like almost as good as that. It's like, no. How do you get people excited? You have to take what's already been successful and elevate it in a way. And I think, again, not to go back to characters, but that might be the easiest way to make something that feels familiar a little bit different, because you brought really interesting characters to life in a memorable way.
Okay. Quinn, for you, is there a big difference between pitching television versus a feature?
I haven't heard as many pitches or been a part of many pitches that with TV. I'm really more feature driven in my team, but the ones that I have had and the ones that have stuck out have been what Dan just mentioned, that there was a perfect through line between story and world, and they were always able to kind of continually keep interweaving in between those two things, telling me the tone, the setting, and then within that setting, the character decided to do this, which moved us to season 2. So it was very, very perfectly interwoven.
Okay. Nicole?
I am actually working on my first feature. So, but it's an adaptation, so I can give you a sense from that POV. When you're, I don't know what it is with the original idea, but for an adaptation, I optioned a book, which is a rom-com novel called Worst Best Man, and it's wedding planner meets My Big Fat Greek Weddings, you know, just to kind of frame it up that way. When we're taking this pitch out, because it's already a novel, and we would have hoped that the executives would have read the book, at minimum the coverage. The majority of the pitch is actually going to be focused on why this writer is the best person to tell this story. The setting, the tone, not so much on the story, because again, you read the book, you should know what the story is about, but where we really want to hit is why now. And we all know that rom-coms are a thing now, but why this particular rom-com, why people should buy it. And so the way that we've outlined it is there are 4 points that we're going to hit. So really, it's really selling, or at least laying it out to the platter for these buyers that, you know, if you buy this, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to make a lot of people happy. And no, it's really honest. No. It's true, because you know, we want to compare it to like a Crazy Rich Asians. Like, it's going to be that big of a success, hopefully, with COVID going away. But so for me, my experience in pitching features, it's been more about selling the world of the genre. On the TV side, which I live in, it's not so much that. It's very, very specific to character, like what you guys mentioned, character and tone. And you do spend some time on the pilot and on the series, that's for sure. So like the bulk of a TV pitch that I've seen, at least the ones that I really respond to, you spend time with characters, and you also mentioned tone, pilot, and then what happens the rest of the season. I think more so we're seeing that now with buyers, because they want to see how you see the season unfolding, and actually also be able to pinpoint, at least for them in my head, what they want to fix. So, because I think when buyers are listening to pitches, they're also thinking about like, how will I change this, and the notes that I would give. And then season 2 and beyond, it's helpful, but I think the less is better, because again, a lot of times buyers want to put their fingers in whatever you're pitching. So it's important to just have, let's say, the hors d'oeuvre, maybe the first course, and then the buyers will see the dinner through with the second, third, and dessert.
I like
I'm
that.
hungry, so that's what I'm.
Me too. Now I'm thinking about, ooh, what is first course? Okay, so I know that Nicole said she likes to hear at the beginning of a pitch, she likes to hear a personal sort of story or connection to the project. For Quinn and Dan, at the beginning of a pitch, do you guys need to know, like, do you need to know the basics? Is like the basics of it, of what it is? Do you like to see the world and then go down to character? Do you like to start with character and build out? Like, what's your preference for how you begin?
For me, I think I like to start with how the story came to them. Why is the story something that you want to tell? why is it important to you, the personal component, and then walk me through, introduce me to the characters in the story as a way of they're part of your family. I know that sounds kind of corny, but you should have that personal touch to, or at least for me, how you present all of the materials among your pitch. And also for me, I really am a visual person. I mean, we work in a visual industry. So if you have visual aids, if you have a deck, it really just helps me build the world and place and time that you want me to live in while I'm listening to you pitch.
Oh, interesting. So are you saying on Zoom calls, you like to have the deck like beforehand, just so you can kind of reference it while you're going?
Well, that works too, but I've even myself, I currently I recently went through the IFP market where we had to like pitch to multiple people for a project that I'm working on. And it was me and my writer filmmaker, and in the room, he would go through the pitch and I would then bring up the cues on the screen. I would share my screen. So as he was talking, he would say a word and I know that's the slide we need to move. And that's the visual component there. So I do think for me, visual aids are really helpful.
Oh, interesting. And Dan, when you're working with your clients on pitching, how do you guys start the pitches?
Yeah, I think it's different for every client. You know, in an ideal world, you'd be able to like shift the pitch a little bit for whoever you're meeting with. It's not realistic. I mean, especially if you're meeting with like 20, 30 people on something. I think the most important thing for us is focusing on how do you build a foundation? How can you, as quickly as possible and authentically, get whoever you're pitching to invest, to care, to help the project stand out in some way. I mean, obviously, those types of pitches are not like, they're not going in blind. Like, obviously, they want to meet, they have a sense of who the writer is, what the project is, but something to build off of that so that you know that you have their attention. And then you can dive deeper. But if you never get that, then it's almost like it's falling on deaf ears, not to be cliche, but it's how can you do that as quickly as possible, know that you have them, and then continue to dive deeper and deeper so that then they can get into the nuance of what really separates it from other pitches.
Exactly, because from hearing, pitches a lot of times, if you don't set that foundation and know what you're listening to and what world you're creating in your head, listening to it, then you're lost because you're still trying to figure out, even 1 minute in, what is this? What world am I in? What's the genre? What's the tone? All of that stuff. So yeah, I think a foundation is really important. And I'm taking notes as I'm listening also. Okay, so let's talk about nerves. And I know, Dan, that you talked about this a little bit, kind of getting over that and not letting that be something that detracts from what you're trying to pitch. What are some tips and tricks from you guys about getting over nerves when you're going into a meeting or into a pitch? And then on that same note, how does somebody recover from messing up or forgetting where they're at or sort of getting lost or off on a tangent? Quinn, do you want to go first?
I'm always nervous. I'm a very, even getting on this Zoom and the fact that there's, I think like 230 people here, it's freaking me out. So I'm not the best to give advice about how to get over your nervousness, but I do know that something that works for me, and I've seen my filmmakers, is practice and breathing. Like they do say you can over practice sometimes, but it's so that sometimes it can sound like you're reading or over rehearsed. But what do we know? Like, practice meets perfect. Like you kind of just have to go through the process, even videotape yourself a little bit and get those nerves off. But if you fumble, which I've done multiple times, and so have my filmmakers, you reset the room. Sorry, where was I? You're just honest about it. And I think, again, that level of personability in a room and on a Zoom is something that you can empathize with. Okay, no worries. Let's get you back on track. So I think the level of humility about the fumble is kind of where you retrieve yourself, pick yourself back up.
That's good advice. Dan, what about you?
I remember when I was like a coordinator at a different management company like 6 years ago, they would like bring me into all like the pitch rehearsals, and they would just be like, go wild, like just tear it apart. And I don't know if that was like the best approach. I definitely think that there's like a point that you don't want to go past in terms of like practicing too much. That's totally something that can be done. You know, I think people say like, oh, a pitch, you should feel like you're at a bar and it's a conversation. It's like, it's not that casual. But again, I think being mindful of the idea, which I cannot repeat enough, they want you to succeed. They want you to kill it. Like, and I think that's got to be comforting in some way, right? Like, there's a lot of public speaking situations in life that's not always the case. That it's not, oh, everyone's there in your favor and they want you. But this is one of those instances. And I think that is something that, like, when you're in the room and you're mid pitch and you're struggling, and you can take a deep breath and reset and just know that it is a safe space. It is a place where they're rooting for you. I think that's super important to be mindful of throughout the entire process. But in terms of getting clients ready and working on nerves, yeah, I think it's just really ironing out the areas of weakness within the pitch. And I think, you know, that first, second, third time where you're practicing it becomes evident, like, hey, we really got to be mindful that like this sense of place is not coming through. How can we describe the world building aspect of this pilot so that that can be visualized by whoever's listening? So I think being mindful of, hey, you know, you're going to really win them over with this. Let's kind of set it up so that, you know, you start off strong. Maybe it's an aspect of the pitch that we're just never going to get great. Try to get away with it, and then carry it all the way home. So I think like just thinking strategically that like it's not always going to be like A, B, C, and D are all 10 out of 10 amazing. Playing to your strengths and making sure that you know where you have to really hit and win it, so that you can highlight that aspect of the pitch in a big way, and maybe get away with some of the other areas that just quite don't get there. So again, it's different for every writer, but I think just knowing that nerves shouldn't be something that you're scared about, and just really try to frame it in a positive way, I think that's super helpful.
I agree. I wanted to quickly go back to what Quinn said about our own nerves. I think that it's super relatable just to say that all of us always feel strange whenever we get on a Zoom or go in a meeting. It never goes away. It's just a different sort of level. And when I started hosting these events for ISA last year, I was absolutely terrified. Completely like, I don't want 200 people on now, you know? So it just takes practice, and you just got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And like Dan was saying, like the level of things change, but you just got to keep doing it, you know? Nicole, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just want to add two things. Or 2.1 and 2.2, and then another one. I think that for people to keep in mind, there are plenty of writers who are not great pitchers, and they're very successful. So, you know, it's no one, I mean, I've been in a lot of pitches, and I can probably name one or two that were phenomenal. And they were because people, these are showrunners that have been doing it, you know, for years, and they could do this while they're sleeping. So there is no perfect way of pitching. So to touch on what Dan said earlier, like, you know, if they play to your strengths, for sure. So if you want to crack jokes to reset, if you, you know, want to be a little bit more revealing than you thought you would do that, because I actually find that endearing. I also think it helps, at least for me, it's not that serious. I mean, it really isn't. It's just pitching TV and film, you know? It really isn't. And I think that if you think about it that way, because I also think there's some writers that come into the room and they think that if they don't get this right, at this moment, it's going to fail. Like, oh, the world's going to end, and my life as a writer is going to be over. Like, it's not that serious. Practice makes perfect. Other writers have done it and they've gotten better. Some have not. It's okay. So yeah, just, I think if you go into it thinking, I don't have to get it right this time. It's okay to mess up. I will mess up. Like, if you go in there with that expectation that there's a possibility of that, I think you won't overthink it, so that you won't over rehearse, you won't over coach yourself. Because I don't like to coach my writers. I let them do their thing, because I feel like because writers are they're wonderful beings, because writers are so, I mean, I have a little envy, because I wish I was a writer myself, because I could just write my stuff and I wouldn't have to find other writers to write stuff for me. But you know, they're very special people, you know, and I don't like to coach them too much, because then it feels like they're a puppet, as opposed to just being themselves in the room. So when I hear a pitch, like if a writer comes up with a take and I hear it, what I'm hearing for is not how to fix it, but how to enhance it, right? Because I don't want to go in there thinking, okay, you should say this now, and I'm going to take this part out and move this up here. I only do that, and if you want me to, I'll ask for permission to do that first. If you want me to do that, I'd be happy to. Again, I would love to be a writer, but I'm not. So I can go in there and do my thing. But if that's not your style, it's okay, right? So my job as a producer, let's say if the person's not a great pitcher, because I've had this person not a great pitcher, then I have to think about other ways how to sell this person, right? So I'm prepping the buyer about this person. I may even have this person just write a pilot. If not many production companies have the ability to do so, but we have the ability to pay writers to write a pilot. We have a development fund. So there are times I'll just have a writer write a pilot and then have them put together a Bible, and we just submit it that way, right? So that when the buyer has questions about the project, it's targeted questions. We get the questions ahead of time, at least if I can, I will. And then I'll prep the writer. Here's what they're going to ask you, so that they go in knowing how it's going to go. But unfortunately, not everyone has the ability to do so. So I want to let the room know that's not a standard. But yeah, that's my 2 or 3 or 50 cents. I kind of went beyond.
That's great. I love that you ask permission. I do. I love that.
Yeah, because I don't want to get in trouble. There's also WGA. So, you know, I do, because I you know, it's murky, yeah. But at the end of the day, what we all want to do is what you said. We want you guys to succeed. We want to, you know, sell the show. And I don't, and I want to be clear, I don't go in and write. That's not what I do. I go in and suggest, like, this section I think should be moved here. This section should be up. This needs to be shortened. This you need to expand on a bit more. This you can take out. It doesn't matter. They're not going to care about that. You know, things like that. That's the writer side that I get to feed, the writer machine I get to feed inside me. But yeah, you have to ask permission, because, you know, writers have a very particular way of how they want to pitch things. And I want to be respectful of that.
So for you guys, do you have any pet peeves or essential don'ts, like things you do not like in a pitch? Do you not like people acting things out? Or, you know, I mean, I know we're on Zoom, but you know, in a room versus Zoom, like, are there any big no's or pet peeves that you guys have? Quinn, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first, but my answer is going to be quick. Like, I don't, at this moment, no. I don't think there's any big don'ts, or again, have not heard a lot of pitches, but I've been more a part of them. So I'm hoping more people are telling me don't do something. But I, as a producer who's listening to pitches, I'm interested to see how you're going to kind of break the mold, especially if it's something different in story. I mean, the don't is, you know, the things that we talked about earlier with nervousness, and just trust yourself, and don't make it a bigger deal than it needs to be, per Nicole's note. Like, I think those are the bigger don'ts. But to avoid anything that might help you in your story, or no, I don't think so. Props, sure, bring them if you think it's gonna work. But like, you know, like, so no, my answer is no.
Okay. What about like when the pitch is done and you have follow-up questions? Is there a specific way that a writer should be going back and forth with you about those questions? Is it okay for somebody to say, I don't know the answer to that? Or should they have an answer for everything?
I would like it kind of goes to something I mentioned before. I think I would like you to know your project through and through. So if I'm posing a question to you, it's not, and I don't know is not okay, but it means it shows me that you haven't thought about the component that I'm thinking about. And as a producer, that's trained in it. So I know that that's going to be coming down the line, either on the page or in the project, or when we go out to buyers, that'll be brought up at some point. So, i.e., this is something you should probably be thinking about too.
Right. What about you, Nicole? Do you have any don'ts or pet peeves?
I don't like it when people talk too fast, so slow down. I think there are people who pitch and they're just like, they just want to get it over with. And I'm like, I do too, especially if it's a bad one. No, I'm joking. But I slow it down. I really, that's my thing. I think I even told the writer, slow down. I'm trying to hear everything you're saying. That's my only thing. Because like I said, I don't like to coach. I don't like to, change how people do their thing. But I definitely think people should just take their time when they're pitching, because it should be fun. Pitching should be fun. And I know it's not everyone's jam, but I think people should really think of pitching, if they're into it, as something that they like to do and telling stories.
Dan, what about you?
I think for me, it's being mindful that no one is going to have a deeper understanding or knowledge of a project than the writer. And so in some ways, like, the writer should take comfort in that, but also be aware that, like, whoever's listening is not going to necessarily know the nuance and detail in a way that they know it. So it's almost like they're teaching, right? Like, how can you educate whoever's listening to the pitch on the project, but making sure that you're giving them everything that they need so that they can piece it together and get a true sense of what the project is. So it's not, don't dive so deep, but also don't go so surface level. How can you find that right balance so that someone who's just hearing about this project for the first time, how do they build that understanding very quickly within the confines of the pitch?
Okay. I'm going to go to a couple questions from the chat, and we have one that I should have asked at the beginning, but I did not. 4 pitches to you guys specifically, and it can be an answer about Zoom pitches that are currently happening versus in the room. How long is your typical pitch? Is it 20 minutes? Is it 10 minutes with follow-up questions? What's the actual pitch length that you prefer?
Are you talking about TV or feature?
Let's do both. TV.
So for TV, I like to hit 20, no more than 25 minutes.
Okay.
The sweet spot is like 22. It's weird, but like every good pitch that I've heard, it hovers around 22, 23. So yeah, 20 to 25 minutes is, I think it's a good number.
And our features, do you think, I can go to Quinn since she's feature.
Yeah, for me, it's shocking to hear 20 for me, because I think for film, I think 7 minutes of the actual beginning to end, tell me what the story is about. And I think that's kind of what I need. But then for the duration of the entire pitch, I think it's more around 25, because it gives me a chance to ask you some questions back and forth a little bit. But I want to be able to kind of understand what the film is in about 7 to 10 minutes.
Okay. And Dan, what do you work with your writers on? How long for pitches?
It's different. So a lot of times when a pitch is going out, there's a producer on board, and they're the ones that are really shaping the pitch. And some of them let me be a part of it, right? We had a project that went to buyers in January, and the first pitch was at a streamer, and it was 20 minutes for a feature, and it felt way too long. Just hearing this after, I wasn't in the room for the pitch, but just hearing it after the fact, it just didn't seem like it was right. They shaved it down to like 12, and it's getting traction. So like, I hate to say like, oh, take this approach and, apply it to every project, but I think it's being mindful of, if it's not working at 20 and it's too long, figure out what that number is. I think being really flexible, that like, if time is an issue within those first few pitches, be able to adjust before moving on to the next ones. So I can't say that it's a number, but I think it's being mindful that different numbers work for different projects.
Is it appropriate, you all, to ask before you pitch how long? I mean, is it appropriate when you're setting up the meeting to ask them how long they prefer, or is that a no-no?
I've never.
Yeah,
no.
I also want to say, I think that when you're walking into these rooms, especially with producers or buyers, I always like to assume that they're going to have a line of other things coming down their pipeline pretty soon anyway. So brevity, especially, you know, before working where I do now, I was at Annapurna Pictures, and no one had any time. And even though we were excited about certain pitches in the room, we still knew that, okay, we hope this is quick. So the quicker you can get to the point of your story and sell it to us, the world, the characters, with all the heart that we've all been talking about, the better. So I think Daniel's right about not applying like a hard set number, but just do know that they have coverage to read, they have other meetings to get to, they have other Zooms to get on, and the quicker you can sell us, the better.
Awesome, thank you. A question from Eve Saunders. If you're not a native speaker in English, but close, do you mention that or just try your best to pretend that you are?
I love it if you mention it, because then I can ask questions about where you're from and get to know you a little bit better. I always think it's the more unique you are, I think that's a plus.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so question on the personal connection to the story. So Quinn, I'm going to throw this to you. My characters and stories, and to Nicole too, my characters and stories are very much fictional with no personal connection other than the creation process, which does feel very personal. I've heard many times the importance of the personal connection. So are there any suggestions for pitching with this in mind? If you don't have a specific, really personal connection to it, how do you create that?
So the
I
question
can answer
is
this pretty quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a pitch where the person had literally no connection to the story, but that person was able to come up with a really funny, unique story that led them to whatever the story was they were going to pitch. I literally sat there and was like, I have no idea how this is related to this thing, but okay, sure. And then literally within the next 2 minutes, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I see what you did there. Okay. And then I leaned in. So even if you don't have a personal connection to that story, listen, the creative process is a personal connection. That is a story that I would like to hear about. Like, what is your creative process? And how did that creative process lead you to pitching me this story? So it's all about, really, it's all about storytelling. And we tell stories every day, right? And it's when you're a TV writer or writer, that's what you're pitching. You're pitching a longer version of the story that you're telling. You know, when someone is, you know, when you're walking down the street and you're in Trader Joe's, especially, you know, how's your day going? You're telling a story about your day. So think about it that way. If that's, you know, if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a personal connection. Why did you come up with this idea? How did it come to be? Like, you're a writer, you got to come up with something. Okay, so we're going to get into the pitches in 1 minute. I just want one last piece of advice from all of you for these specific short form pitches that are just a couple of minutes.
Have fun. Just have fun. Yeah.
Okay.
That's gonna be mine. Have fun and relax, and I'm excited to hear them, and like we want to hear them. Yeah. Perfect. Dan?
I think you're going beyond having fun, which is great. Strive for clarity and immediacy. You know, give us a sense of what it is and build that understanding in our minds as quickly as you can.